Claressa Shields is the greatest women's boxer breathing right now. And before this video is over, that sentence is going to land with even more force than it does right now. Because what we are really watching is not just a boxing promo gone sideways. What we are watching is what happens when a real champion gets dropped into a reality TV storm, and one man with a microphone accidentally reveals way more than anybody around him wanted revealed. So before we go one step deeper into this mess, I hope everybody watching is doing good. I hope your weekend is solid. I hope your people are straight. But for the hype merchants, the cosign choir, the professional excuse makers, and every promotional illusionist trying to sell this thing like it all makes perfect sense, happy weekend, welcome to the show, and let's go ahead and drag this whole situation into the light. Because this one is big. This might be one of the biggest breakdowns I have put together on this channel in a long time, and if you already know what type of time I'm on, then do what you always do. Smash the like button. And I do not mean politely tap it. I mean hit it like it owes you money and has been ducking you all month. Subscribe if you haven't already. Ring the bell. Stay locked in. Because once we really open up what Ray J said, how he said it, what it sounded like, and what it may have revealed about this entire event without him even realizing it, you are going to laugh, you are going to shake your head, and you may end up looking at this whole card completely differently by the time we are done. And let me say this right now before people start getting emotional in the comments and pretending they can't hear tone, subtext, or basic common sense. This is not me saying Claressa Shields is anything less than elite. Quite the opposite. This is me saying Claressa Shields may be the one person in this entire setup whose credibility is actually beyond debate, which is exactly why what's happening around her looks so wild. Because Claressa Shields signed up to fight. Claressa Shields signed up to be a champion. Claressa Shields signed up to handle business in the ring the way she always does. What she did not sign up for, at least from the outside looking in, is to have her name attached to a promotional machine that seems determined to turn a championship-level fighter into supporting scenery for a social media circus. And once you see it that way, once you really strip the paint off this whole thing, a lot of what has looked random suddenly starts looking very, very consistent. So let's set the table properly. At the center of this whole spectacle is a card being pushed as boxing, sold with celebrity energy, wrapped in reality TV marketing, and headlined by a fighter whose resume belongs in one conversation only: greatness. Claressa Shields is not some internet novelty. Claressa Shields is not some influencer in gloves. Claressa Shields is not somebody borrowing legitimacy from the sport for one big night of attention. Claressa Shields has been that. Claressa Shields built that. Claressa Shields earned that. She is a two-time Olympic gold medalist. She is an undisputed champion. She is one of the most decorated fighters to ever step into the ring. Period. Now put that next to what's sitting beneath her on this event. Ray J versus Orlando Brown. Yes, that Ray J. That Orlando Brown. Not in a skit. Not in a parody trailer. Not in a fake poster made by somebody on Twitter for laughs. On an actual card. In an actual arena. Under an actual combat sports umbrella. With actual promotional language trying to present all of this as one coherent product. Take a breath and really let that combination settle in your mind, because that tension right there is the whole story. That contrast explains almost everything. You have one of the greatest women's fighters of all time sitting on top of a show that also wants you to treat celebrity chaos like it belongs in the exact same emotional frame. And then Ray J, being Ray J in the most Ray J way humanly possible, gets in front of a camera and starts talking. That is where this thing stops being weird and starts becoming revealing. Because the issue is not just that Ray J talked. Ray J is always going to talk. Ray J breathes in sound bites. Ray J metabolizes attention. Ray J has made a career out of turning moments into headlines, headlines into clips, and clips into relevance. That is who he is. Nobody is surprised that Ray J is going to get animated. Nobody is shocked that Ray J is going to oversell. Nobody expects subtlety from Ray J on a promotional run. But what makes this moment different is that Ray J didn't just oversell his own fight. He sounded like he was accidentally tearing the label off the whole product while trying to hype it. And that matters. Because the second the audience starts feeling like the undercard is talking louder than the champion, the event stops feeling like a boxing card with celebrity seasoning and starts feeling like a celebrity spectacle with boxing used as credibility wallpaper. That is a very different thing. And if you think I'm exaggerating, let's get into the energy of what Ray J put out there. Ray J got on camera and started talking with the confidence of a man who absolutely believed he was selling the event. He sounded loose. He sounded amused. He sounded like he was in complete control of the moment. And the more comfortable he got, the more he started saying things that, at minimum, made the whole operation look unserious. That is the word that keeps coming back to me. Unserious. Not fun. Not lively. Not unpredictable. Those are all things a combat sports card can survive. Unserious. Because once a card starts feeling unserious, that feeling doesn't stay neatly contained around the celebrity portion. It spreads. It leaks upward. Touches the whole poster. It puts a haze over the entire event, including the very fighter who should be insulated from that kind of mess. And that is where Claressa gets pulled into something she did not create. When Ray J starts joking, rambling, winking, and saying things in a way that sounds like the whole environment is loose, playful, and driven more by entertainment energy than competitive seriousness, people don't just hear Ray J. They start hearing the promotion through Ray J. They start hearing the platform through Ray J. They start hearing the priorities of the event through Ray J. That is why this matters. Because Ray J may think he is just being funny, just being charismatic, just being the guy people click to watch. But in moments like this, the loudest personality in the room becomes an unofficial narrator of the whole thing, whether anybody planned it that way or not. And that unofficial narration? It did not help. Not if your goal is to protect the image of a championship-level fighter. Not if your goal is to present the event as credible. Not if your goal is to make people believe the sport is still the center of gravity here. Now, one of the biggest things that jumped out to people was the tone. Not even just the words. The tone. Because tone tells on people faster than content sometimes. You can hear when somebody thinks the room is a joke. You can hear when somebody thinks the stakes are flexible. You can hear when somebody feels like the line between sport and spectacle has already been crossed, and now everybody is just competing to get the best clip off. That's what it sounded like. And the problem for Zeus, or for anybody trying to market this event as a legitimate boxing presentation first, is that tone can be fatal. Tone changes how fans interpret everything else. Tone makes innocent comments sound loaded. Tone makes loose promotional chatter sound like confession. Tone makes audiences start asking questions that may not have even been in the air before. That is how trust gets cracked. Because people don't need a signed statement to start feeling like something is off. They just need the vibe to look wrong. And let's be honest, the vibe around this whole thing has looked off for a minute. Not because Claressa Shields is off. Let me say that again for the people in the back who only hear what they want to hear. Not because Claressa Shields is off. Because the environment around Claressa Shields feels off. That distinction matters. Claressa's resume does not need Ray J. Claressa's legacy does not need Zeus. Claressa's greatness does not need celebrity validation. If anything, it is the opposite. The event needs Claressa. The platform needs Claressa. The poster needs Claressa. The broader marketing package needs Claressa's seriousness so badly that you can almost see the whole thing leaning on her silhouette. That is why it lands so hard when the co-main begins acting like the world is showing up primarily for him. And whether Ray J meant it exactly that way or not, whether he was half joking or full performing or just doing what Ray J does, that is what a lot of people heard. They heard a celebrity act talking as if the champion at the top of the card were somehow secondary to the spectacle beneath her. That is not just a promo mistake. That is a structural mistake. That is the kind of mistake that tells you what kind of event you are really looking at. Because on a properly balanced card, the undercard can be loud, colorful, funny, chaotic, meme-worthy, whatever you want. But it still knows the assignment. It knows there is a ceiling above it. It knows there is a hierarchy. It knows there is a main event for a reason. It knows the champion is the center even when others are making noise. Here, the noise started sounding like the center. And if the audience gets that impression, you have a problem no amount of poster design can fix. Let's talk about what that says about Zeus, because this is bigger than Ray J. Ray J is the easiest face to focus on because Ray J is the one talking, but the larger question is who created the conditions for this and who benefits from it. That is where it gets interesting. Zeus knows exactly what it sells. Zeus understands conflict. Zeus understands personalities. Zeus understands clips. Zeus understands viral moments, social media spread, reaction cycles, messy conversations, group chat energy, comment section warfare, and the entire economy of attention that powers modern entertainment. That is not an insult. That is the business. The problem comes when you try to merge that business model with a sport that is supposed to operate on a very different type of credibility. Boxing can absolutely coexist with spectacle. Boxing has always had spectacle. Boxing loves spectacle. Boxing was born for spectacle. But there is a difference between spectacle orbiting the sport and spectacle swallowing the sport whole. That difference is everything. When the audience believes the promotion respects the sport, spectacle adds flavor. When the audience believes the promotion is using the sport as set dressing, spectacle becomes contamination. And that is exactly the line this whole event appears to be walking. Because what are people seeing? They are seeing a world-class champion placed alongside celebrity chaos. They are seeing more buzz generated by sideshow energy than by the actual competitive story at the top. They are seeing gaps in the messaging, weird promotional silence in some places, loud overcompensation in others, and then on top of that, one of the loudest figures attached to the card getting comfortable enough to talk like the whole thing is a reality TV production with gloves. That's where the damage starts. And let's go even further, because there is another level to this that people are dancing around. The more this gets framed as a lifestyle content event instead of a fight event, the more unfair it becomes to the actual fighter whose name carries the most real sporting weight. Because Claressa Shields did not spend her life grinding in gyms, stacking achievements, carrying women's boxing, demanding respect, fighting for better pay, fighting for better visibility, fighting for recognition, just to become the serious part of a circus flyer. That is the insult here. Not that there is entertainment on the card. Not that celebrity boxing exists. Not that sideshow fights are automatically invalid. The insult is when the architecture of the event starts implying that the real champion is borrowing relevance from the circus rather than the circus borrowing legitimacy from the champion. That is backwards. And a lot of people saw Ray J's comments as the moment that backward logic stopped being subtext and started becoming audible. Now, do I think Ray J sat down intending to sabotage the promotion? No. Honestly, I don't. That would require a level of precision I'm not convinced was present. I don't think Ray J walked in with some evil master plan to undermine Claressa Shields or expose the network or crack the event open from the inside. I don't think that. I think Ray J was doing what Ray J does best. I think Ray J was talking. I think Ray J was riffing. I think Ray J was feeling the camera. I think Ray J was enjoying himself. I think Ray J was selling his own presence as hard as possible. And in the process, I think he revealed the exact imbalance that critics of this event have been side-eyeing from the beginning. That is why this has people talking. Because sometimes the most revealing thing isn't a leaked memo or some insider report. Sometimes it's just the wrong person getting too comfortable on camera. The more Ray J spoke, the more the event started sounding like it was built around attention first and sporting seriousness second. Again, maybe that is not what the organizers would say. Maybe that is not how the platform would frame it. Maybe if you ask 10 people behind the scenes, they would all insist the card is being handled professionally and respectfully. Maybe. But public perception does not wait for a formal statement. Public perception is built out of clips, tone, timing, optics, contrast, and instinct. That's what people react to. That's what gets screenshotted. That's what gets quoted in comment sections. That's what lives in people's heads once the interview is over. And right now, the optics are doing Claressa no favors. One of the things that makes this so frustrating is that there is a version of this event that could have worked much better. There really is. You can build a card with mainstream personalities on it. You can bring in celebrity names. You can cross over audiences. You can create something noisy and fun and culturally messy and still preserve the dignity of the legitimate top fight. That has been done before, can be done again, but it requires discipline. It requires messaging discipline. It requires tonal discipline. It requires somebody in the room who knows when a joke stops helping. It requires a promotion that understands that the champion cannot look like an accessory on her own poster. It requires a shared awareness that not every viral clip is good for the event. And that is where this thing looks like it broke down. Because nobody appears to have been managing the hierarchy of the story. A proper fight promotion tells you who the night belongs to. This promotion, at least from the outside, feels like it let the loudest voices compete for ownership of the night in real time. That is chaos. And chaos can be entertaining right up until it starts diluting the very product you need people to take seriously. Now let's talk about Claressa Shields more directly, because she deserves that much. Claressa is not just another belt holder. Claressa is not just another recognizable athlete. Claressa Shields is one of those rare figures who has had to force her greatness into the public imagination because the system was never eager to do it for her. She had to demand respect. She had to outperform dismissal. She had to push her own narrative uphill. She had to become impossible to ignore. That matters here because when somebody like that gets inserted into a muddy promotional environment, the audience immediately feels the mismatch. Claressa is flint. Claressa is grit. Claressa is achievement. Claressa is work. Claressa is proof. Claressa is the kind of fighter whose existence should stabilize an event, not the kind of fighter who should need stabilization from surrounding celebrities. So when the environment around her starts looking flimsy or confused or unserious, it doesn't pull Claressa down as much as it exposes the weakness of everything else around her. That is the irony. In trying to create a bigger entertainment package, the promotion may have accidentally made Claressa look even more like the only truly solid piece in the building. And maybe that ends up helping her in the long run. Maybe that is the twist. Because there are two ways a champion can interact with chaos. 1, the chaos swallows the champion, muddies the legacy, and makes the event feel cheap by association. 2, the chaos accidentally frames the champion as the only adult in the room and makes her seriousness shine even brighter by contrast. If I'm betting on the second one. Because Claressa Shields has made a career out of walking into doubt, noise, disrespect, and structural nonsense, and then leaving with all the oxygen anyway. That is what great champions do. And that is why, as much as this promotion looks weird and as much as Ray J's comments have given everybody material to chew on, I still come back to one basic truth. Once the bell rings, none of these people can save Claressa and none of these people can diminish Claressa. The ring still belongs to the fighter. The performance still belongs to the fighter. The memory that lasts longest still tends to belong to the fighter, especially if that fighter is already operating at a historically elite level. But that doesn't excuse the mess. And it definitely doesn't mean people shouldn't call it out. Because another big issue here is what this represents for women's boxing more broadly. That part matters. You cannot spend years talking about respect, legitimacy, investment, platform equity, and equal treatment, and then casually shrug when one of the sport's biggest women's stars gets slotted into an event that some viewers now see as driven more by celebrity gimmick energy than by boxing logic. That tension matters. If women's boxing is going to keep growing, and it should, then the stars at the top of that world need environments that amplify their legitimacy, not environments that force them to share tonal space with chaos merchants who accidentally make the whole night sound like a skit. Again, to be crystal clear, this is not about saying celebrities can never box or crossover events should never happen. That would be silly. Sports and entertainment have always mixed. The issue is respect. The issue is proportion. The issue is narrative control. The issue is whether the top fighter is being framed as the reason for the event or merely one ingredient in a bigger platform-driven spectacle. That is the heart of the criticism. And Ray J, by being Ray J, made that criticism impossible to ignore. Now let's spend a second on the whole selling the fight defense, because I already know that is where a lot of people are going to run. He was just selling the fight. He was just hyping the event. He was just doing promo. Fine. That's the standard defense. And to a point, it's true. Promotions are about exaggeration. Promotions are about confidence. Promotions are about talking big. That's not new. But there is a difference between selling your fight and overshadowing the structure of the card. There is a difference between hyping yourself and sounding like you think the actual champion above you is just part of your supporting cast. There is a difference between colorful promotion and promotional cannibalism. That's what people reacted to. It wasn't just that Ray J was loud. It was what his loudness appeared to imply. If the audience walks away thinking the celebrity chaos is the real engine and the world-class boxer is just there to give the event legitimacy, then something has gone wrong at the level of presentation. That is not the fans' fault for noticing it. That is not haters being mean. That is not people taking jokes too seriously. That is the natural outcome of a card failing to clearly communicate what it wants to be. And maybe that confusion is the business model. Maybe ambiguity is the point. Maybe the event wants both audiences at once and believes the tension itself is marketable. Maybe the platform thinks the contradiction is the hook. A real champion, celebrity drama, viral clips, sideshow energy, competitive seriousness, meme culture. Put it all in the same blender and call it disruptive. Maybe. But if that is the strategy, it comes with a cost. Because disruptive is just a flattering word for unstable when the structure underneath isn't strong enough. And right now, instability is what people are seeing. They are seeing an event where the most emotionally coherent story might not be the one the promoters intended. Instead of, look at this stacked, exciting night of entertainment and boxing, the story becoming visible is, look at this real champion surrounded by noise that may not deserve her. That is not ideal if you're selling unity. But it is great if you're making commentary videos because once that lens clicks into place, the whole picture changes. Suddenly Ray J doesn't look like a funny co-main. He looks like a living symptom of the event's internal imbalance. Suddenly Zeus doesn't look bold. It looks reckless. Suddenly the card doesn't look eclectic. It looks tonally confused. Suddenly Claressa doesn't look elevated by crossover attention. She looks burdened by it. And once the fans start seeing that, you can't easily talk them out of it. The truth is, a lot of people have been waiting for someone attached to this thing to say the quiet part out loud. Not literally, not perfectly, but close enough that the audience could hear it. Close enough that critics could point and say, see? That's exactly what we meant. Ray J gave them that moment. Whether he intended to or not, he gave them a clip that seems to validate every suspicion that this card may be running on entertainment logic first and boxing logic second. That is why people keep replaying it. Because it's not just amusing. Feels revealing. And that's dangerous for a promotion. Now, let me zoom out even more because I think this is ultimately a story about categories. Categories are important. The world gets weird when categories collapse. A reality TV platform wants one thing. Boxing legitimacy wants another. Celebrity promotion wants one tone. Championship presentation wants another. Influencer energy wants one pacing. Traditional fight build-up wants another. If you force all those categories into one room, somebody has to be in charge of keeping the borders intact. If no one does that, you get this. You get a night where the champion's seriousness has to fight for air against personalities who don't even realize they're draining oxygen from the top of the card. You get fans asking whether the event respects its own best asset. You get commentators spending more time breaking down promo clips than competitive stakes. You get the undercard accidentally authoring the narrative of the entire show. That should never happen on a card that's trying to center a fighter like Claressa Shields. Never. And yet here we are. I also want to touch on something else that sits underneath all this. Attention versus respect. This is a huge divide and a lot of people never learn it. Attention and respect are not the same currency. Ray J understands attention. Better than most, honestly. Ray J has survived in public life for years because he knows how to stay in the camera's memory. That is a skill. That is real. But boxing, especially championship boxing, requires a different currency too. It requires respect. It requires structure. It requires an understanding that not every moment should be optimized for personal spotlight. And that, I think, is the disconnect. Ray J was playing the attention game. Claressa's presence requires the respect game. Those two currencies are not interchangeable. If anything, when you flood a championship environment with attention game behavior, you risk devaluing the respect-based framework the top fighter depends on. That is why this feels so jarring. And if you want to know why some boxing fans reacted with that slow, tired, disgusted head shake instead of laughter, that's why. To them, it's not just funny. It's familiar. It's another example of the sport flirting with spectacle in ways that seem to ask the serious athletes to absorb the risk while everybody else enjoys the clicks. That gets old. Especially when the serious athlete is somebody who has already had to fight for fair treatment every step of the way. Now here's the thing that could flip this whole story on its head. If Claressa goes in there and does what people expect her to do, if she performs like a champion and reminds the audience exactly why her name belongs in a different category from the surrounding noise, then all of this may backfire on everybody except her. Because then the contrast becomes complete. Then the event stops being Claressa on a weird card and becomes, look how much bigger Claressa looks than the card itself. That's a powerful reversal. And honestly, it may already be happening. Because think about how people are talking now. Are they really talking about Ray J as a legitimate threat or serious boxing attraction? Not really. They're talking about him as chaos, as content, as promotional instability, as accidental exposure. Meanwhile, every time they circle back to Claressa, they do so with the language of legitimacy. Champion, greatness, resume, pound for pound, accomplishment, legacy. That contrast is telling. In trying to make the night louder, the promotion may have actually strengthened the perception that Claressa is operating above the event rather than merely inside it. That is not what I imagine the organizers intended, but it may be where this lands. Still, that doesn't erase the core issue. A champion of this level should not need the audience to mentally rescue her from the surrounding product. The product should do that work for her. The marketing should do that work for her. The event architecture should do that work for her. The hierarchy should be obvious. The messaging should be obvious. The centrality of the champion should be obvious. If commentators like me can look at a few clips and immediately feel the imbalance, then the imbalance is real enough to matter. And let's be honest with ourselves. A lot of this was predictable. Not every detail, not every quote, not every exact moment, but the overall collision. Completely predictable. You put Ray J in a promotional environment and ask him to be measured? Good luck. You build a crossover spectacle on a reality-driven platform and ask the audience to separate the serious from the chaotic by instinct? Good luck. You place one of the greatest women's boxers ever on top of that structure and assume nothing will feel strange? Good luck. This was always going to be a tightrope walk. The question now is whether the event can recover its center before fight night, or whether the perception has already hardened. And perception hardens fast online. Once a narrative takes shape, it spreads. Once people decide a card is a circus, every clip confirms it. Once people decide the champion is being used as legitimacy paint, every promo beat reinforces that suspicion. That is what Zeus is up against now. And to be fair, maybe Zeus is perfectly happy with the chaos. Maybe controversy is not a bug. Maybe it's the feature. Maybe the platform has no problem with people arguing over whether the event is serious, because argument is attention and attention drives subscriptions. Maybe the discomfort itself is monetized. That would be very on-brand in a lot of ways. But again, that strategy has a cost when real athletes are involved. Because unlike pure reality TV, boxing leaves marks. Unlike pure reality TV, combat sports involve actual risk. Unlike pure reality TV, the legacy consequences do not disappear when the episode ends. That is why fans are more sensitive to this kind of tonal collapse in a boxing setting. They should be. The stakes are different. And that brings me right back to Claressa Shields, because the more I think about it, the more this whole situation actually says something positive about her, even while it reflects badly on the event around her. It says her credibility is so strong that the surrounding chaos can't absorb it. It says her status is so solid that even a messy promotional setup ends up highlighting how separate she is from the nonsense. It says the champion is still the champion even when the co-main gets loud. That's important, because the microphone is not the ring. The promo clip is not the performance. The viral moment is not the record book. And when the dust settles, people still know who Claressa Shields is. Ray J may trend. Zeus may stir debate. The undercard may generate memes. But Claressa carries the kind of legitimacy that survives all of that. The bigger question is whether she should have to. That is what people are really asking. Not whether Claressa can withstand the weirdness. She can. Not whether Claressa remains great. She does. not whether the audience still knows who the best fighter on the card is. They do. The question is why a fighter of her stature keeps ending up in situations where the environment around her seems so much less serious than the work she represents. That is the deeper frustration. That is the broader indictment. That is the thing this whole Ray J moment accidentally illuminated. Because one loose promo rant from a celebrity should not be able to shift the emotional framing of a championship event this much. If it can, then the event was not structurally sound to begin with. That is the real story. And if you're Zeus, that's the part that should worry you most. Not the jokes. Not the memes. Not the fact that people are laughing. The worrying part is that one camera appearance by the wrong personality seems to have confirmed for a lot of observers that the card was built on unstable storytelling from the start. That's tough to recover from. Now, since I already know how the comments section works, let me say it myself before somebody else tries it. No, this does not mean the event cannot still be entertaining. It might be. No, this does not mean nobody should watch. People will watch. No, this does not mean celebrities have no place in combat sports. They do, depending on context. No, this does not mean Claressa Shields herself is diminished as a fighter. She isn't. But none of that cancels the critique. Because the critique is not, this event exists. The critique is, what kind of event is this really? And who is being asked to legitimize it? That's the question. And the more people hear Ray J talk, the more one answer keeps rising to the surface. This is a Zeus event first, a boxing event second, and Claressa Shields is being leaned on to bridge the gap. If that feels unfair to her, that's because it is. If that feels disrespectful to the sport, that's because many fans see it that way. If that feels like a platform misunderstanding the difference between visibility and credibility, that's because that misunderstanding is written all over the tone of this rollout. And I keep coming back to tone because tone is where truth leaks out fastest. A polished press release can hide a lot. A carefully edited trailer can hide a lot. A designed poster can hide a lot. But an unscripted personality talking freely? That's where structure gets exposed. That's where values leak. That's where you find out who really thinks this is a spectacle, who thinks it's a joke, who thinks it's just content, and who remembers there's a champion on the card whose name actually means something beyond the clip cycle. Ray J sounded like content. Claressa sounds like legacy. That gap is the whole breakdown. And if Zeus didn't understand how obvious that gap would become once the interviews started rolling, then Zeus misread the assignment. One more thing before I close, because this part matters too. Fans need to watch with clear eyes. That doesn't mean don't enjoy it. It means don't get hypnotized by the noise. Don't let the loudest personality determine what the night means. Don't let celebrity antics rewrite the hierarchy in your head. Don't let viral clips convince you that the champion is secondary just because the undercard is better at generating memes. Keep the categories straight. Enjoy the circus if you want. Laugh at the chaos if you want. React to the clips if you want. But remember who the actual champion is. Remember who actually built a legacy. Remember whose name belongs in the history books and whose name belongs in the promo reel. Remember the difference between a spectacle and a resume, because that difference is what this whole event has been blurring, and that blur is exactly why so many people are talking. At the end of the day, that may end up being the funniest part of all of this. Ray J likely believed he was helping. He likely believed he was carrying energy, creating buzz, lifting the entire event, making himself indispensable to the rollout. And maybe in pure attention terms, he was, but in the process, he also may have done something else. He may have reminded the audience exactly how much more real Claressa Shields is than the machine surrounding her. That is not the headline he intended to write. But it may be the headline he wrote anyway. Because every time the co-main gets louder than the champion, people start asking why. Every time a reality TV platform seems more comfortable selling personalities than protecting hierarchy, people start noticing. Every time a real fighter gets surrounded by promotional confusion, the audience starts separating the athlete from the apparatus. And right now, that separation is getting wider by the day. So to everybody defending Ray J by saying, that's just Ray J being Ray J, I agree. That is exactly what this is. The problem is that Ray J being Ray J may be one of the worst possible energies to place at the center of a promotional ecosystem that is supposed to make a championship fighter feel like the unquestioned focal point of the night. That's the issue. That's the meltdown. That's why people are talking. That's why this clip matters. And that's why this whole thing feels bigger than just one funny interview. Because if the loudest sound coming off your card is chaos, then chaos becomes your brand whether you intended it or not. And if chaos becomes your brand while Claressa Shields is standing at the top of the poster, then the audience starts to feel like Claressa is doing your event a favor simply by showing up. That is not how this should work. A champion should elevate the card, yes. But the card should also respect the champion back. That reciprocity is what's missing. That balance is what feels broken. That is what Ray J, maybe without meaning to, made impossible not to see. So now we wait. We wait to see whether Zeus recalibrates. We wait to see whether the promotion gets tighter. We wait to see whether the event remembers who its real center is. We wait to see whether Claressa does what great champions do and turns all this chaos into background noise the moment the bell rings. And if she does, and I suspect she will, then all this promotional confusion is going to look even uglier in retrospect, because people are going to watch a real champion do real champion work and realize just how much of the buildup was smoke. That will be the final irony. The louder the circus got, the more it may have prepared the audience to appreciate the one person who never needed any of it. Claressa Shields is still Claressa Shields. The resume is still the resume. The greatness is still the greatness. The champion is still the champion. And Ray J, in trying to become the headline, may have accidentally reminded everybody who the real story was all along. So now I want to hear from you. Did Ray J hurt the promotion? Or did he just reveal what the promotion already was? Did the rollout make Claressa Shields look bigger than the event? Or did it drag unnecessary chaos into her spotlight? And when all of this is over, do you think people are going to remember the noise? Or are they going to remember the champion standing above it? Drop your thoughts below. If you made it this far, hit the like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. Ring the bell. And if you want, I can take this even further in the next pass, meaner, sharper, more theatrical, more clickbait, more monetization safe, or fully formatted for voiceover delivery.